say 30, 60, 90. Why is it called that? Because one of the angles is 30 degrees, the other is 60, and then of course you got your 90, okay? So when you do that, you create three things. A short leg. How do I know it's a short leg? Because it's opposite of the smallest angle. You have a long leg. How do I know that? Because it's opposite of the bigger angle. And then this guy is called the hypotenuse. It's still called the hypotenuse, okay? So what they're going to do is they're going to give you one of them, and they want you to find the other two. So I kind of made a little cheat sheet here. When they give you one of these, and you have to find one of these, this is how you do it, okay? It's a little cheat sheet here, okay? So we're going to use that. That's going to kind of be your guide to answer all of these questions, okay, until you get good at it. All right, okay, so here we go. Example 1A. First of all, it is a right triangle. I can see that. Is it a 30, 60, 90 right triangle? Is it a 30, 60, 90? Yeah, it is, right? I see a 30, or sorry, I see a 60, and I see a right triangle, a right angle. So that means the other one has to be 30. It can't be anything else because when you add them all up, they have to be 180, right? Okay. We know one of the sides is 10. Is that the short leg, the long leg, or the hypotenuse? It's a hypotenuse, right? How do we know that? Because it's opposite of the right triangle. So we know, let me color code this. We know the hypotenuse. We have to find this side and this side. Okay? Okay. So first of all, we got a short leg and a long leg. Which one's the short, X or Y? And which one's the long, X or Y? And how do we know? Which one is the short leg? It's Y, right? It looks shorter than X, right? Here's the thing though. Looks can be deceiving sometimes because I've seen triangles like that where they switch them up. So how can you tell for sure? The opposite, right? So whatever is opposite of 30 is always going to be the short. Whatever is opposite of 60 is always going to be the long. That's the way you really tell, okay? Because sometimes they draw pictures that aren't to scale. They don't look like what they're supposed to look like. So we got to be careful there. Okay, so let's go up to the table here. The left side says, what do I have? I have the hypotenuse. And it says, okay, if you're trying to find the short leg, that's true, I am, divide the hypotenuse by 2. Divide the hypotenuse by 2, okay? So we want to find the short leg. So let me write this down here. Short leg, which is Y. The short leg is Y. The table said, take the hypotenuse and divide it by 2. What's the hypotenuse? 10. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So that means Y is 5. Okay. So now I have to find the long leg, which is X. I got to find the long leg. The long leg, which is X. Okay, so let's go back up to our table. I want to find the long leg. So whatever you want to find, you go to the middle. I want to find the long leg. So what do I need to do? I need to multiply the short leg by the square root of 3. Multiply the short leg by the square root of 3. What was the short leg again? 5. And we need to multiply it times the square root of 3. So immediately I go to my calculator and I go 5 times the square root of 3. It's like 8 point something. Why is that going to be wrong? Because that's a decimal, right? Even if you round it, it's still a decimal. So how do I write my answer without a decimal? This is how you do it. Can I multiply 5 times 3 to make 15? What were the rules? We've done this before. We did it in January and February, and I think we did it a little bit last month too. When can I multiply and when can I not multiply? They're both in the same, if they both roots, go for it. If that had a root as well, go for it. But if they don't, you can't. So what do? You don't do anything. That's your answer. 5 times the square root of 3. 5 times the square root of 3. If it said round your answer, then go right to your calculator and have fun. But it didn't say round. In fact, it said no decimals. Okay? So that's why we can't do it. Okay? Short leg, long leg, hypotenuse. All right, let's go to B now. So B, it's a 30, 60, 90 because one of them is 30, the other is 60. So we know it's a 30, 60, 90. What is the given? Is it the short leg, the long leg, or the hypotenuse? It's the long leg this time, right? They've given us the long leg is 12. How do I know it's the long leg? Because it's opposite of the 60. Opposite of the 30 is going to be y. That's the short leg. And then the hypotenuse is always the hypotenuse. That one doesn't change. Okay, so that one's there, and that one's there. Okay? So what do I have? I have the long leg. What's given? Long leg. How do you find the short leg? Because I still need to do that. You divide the long leg by the square root of 3. Okay, so I'm going to divide the long leg by the square root of 3. So I'm finding the short leg, right? Let me move this. The short leg is y. Okay. So it said to do that, let's see, where was I at? The long leg. To find the short leg, divide by the square root of 3. Well, what was the long leg? 12, right? Divided by the square root of 3. Okay? Again, if you divide that, you're going to get a decimal. No decimals. So we got to have another way. In fact, we did. We did this on Monday and Tuesday. What happened when we had a square root on the bottom? We couldn't finish our answer with the square root on the bottom. Multiply, right? We multiplied by the square root. Whatever root there was, we multiplied. And then you go straight across. Can I multiply 12 times 3 to make 36? No, because 12 is not inside, right? So it's 12 root 3. Can I multiply 3 times 3 to make 9? Yes, because they're both in the square root. And what is the square root of 9? 3. Okay, so if I put that answer in Delta Math, they would mark me wrong. Not because I did anything wrong, but what did I forget to do? Reduce. Can I divide 12 and 3, right? I can divide them both by 3. So that becomes a 4 and that becomes a 1. So if there's a 1 on the bottom, you don't need to write that. It's just 4 times the square root of 3. That's going to be y. That's the short leg. Now the hypotenuse. So now I got to find the hypotenuse. So I'm going to go back to my table. Hypotenuse is x. Go back to my table. What I need to find is in the middle. Hypotenuse. Multiply whatever you got with the short leg, multiply it by 2. Multiply the short leg by 2. I just did the short leg. That was 4 times the square root of 3. I need to multiply that by 2. So I got a 4, a 3, and a 2. Can I multiply all of them to make 24? Or can I only multiply some of them? Can I multiply none of them? I can multiply some of them, right? 4 doesn't have a root. 2 doesn't have a root. Go for it. 4 times 2 is 8. Square root of 3 is the only root, so I can't multiply that times anything. There you go. Okay? That's 30, 60, 90. The other triangle is a 45, 45, 90. Okay, 45, 45, 90. That one I think is easier. Look at the table. This table, not that long, but still had a table. Look at the next table. It's like half the size, right? The next table is like, it's only got 2 things. It's nicer. Because with a 45, 45, 90, the 2 legs, there's no small leg and long leg. They're both the same length. They're both the same length. The hypotenuse is different. The hypotenuse is different, okay? Okay, so let's go to 2a. Is it a 45, 45, 90? Yes, this one has to be 45. X and Y. So first of all, what's given? Is it a leg or is it a hypotenuse? What's the given part? A leg, right? We got a leg. So the legs are both the same for these guys. For these guys, the legs are exactly the same. The hypotenuse is the one that changes, is different, okay? So if I have a leg, the other leg is exactly the same. So leg, y, how do I find that? I don't have to multiply times anything. It's just the same as the other leg. The 2 legs are always the same. Okay? Now the hypotenuse, which is x. So if I have a leg and I got to find a hypotenuse, multiply the leg by the square root of 2. So we said the leg was 3 times the square root of 2, and I have to multiply that by another square root of 2, it says. So I got a 3, a 2, and a 2. Which ones can I multiply, or which ones can I not multiply, or what's the story? The 2's, right? So 2 times 2 is 4. What is the square root of 4? 2. So it's really just 3 times 2. It's really just 3 times 2. Okay. All right. Okay, so now let it be. It's a 45, 45, 90. Which one have they given us? A leg or a hypotenuse? A hypotenuse, right? So they give us the hypotenuse. So let's go here. Okay, so the hypotenuse is that. And then we have 2 legs, x and y. So we got to find a leg. So if we have a hypotenuse and we got to find a leg, we're not going to multiply by the square root of 2. We're actually going to divide by the square root of 2. Okay, so take our hypotenuse and divide by the square root of 2. So we've multiplied roots, right? When they're roots, multiply them. When they're not roots, don't multiply them. How do you think we're going to divide? It's the same rules. If they have a square root, divide them. If they don't have a square root, don't divide them. So 2 can't be divided by anything because it doesn't have a square root. But what's 6 divided by 2? 3. So it's just square root 3. If they have a square root, divide them. Just like if they had a square root up here, you multiplied them, right, to make 4, and then we changed it to make 2. It's the same thing. It's the same. And then once you find one leg, you found them all. Okay. All right. Okay, so we're going to do 3 and 4. Number 5, the little table thing, that is actually your exit ticket. I just didn't put it on an exit ticket because it was I had room on here. So number 5 is actually the one you're going to do by yourselves. Okay, so 3 and 4 is what we're going to do together. Okay. All right, so number 3, we have a square. It says it's a square. What do we know about squares? What do we know about squares? What is special about squares? A couple things. There's 4 right angles, all sides even. Yep, absolutely. So all of these guys are right angles. And all of these sides are exactly the same. So everywhere, every side, we know it's the square root of 8. So what it makes is 2 triangles. You can see the 2 triangles, so I'll highlight them. One's going to be yellow. Here's a triangle here. And then the other one I'll do green. Triangle here. So there's 2 right triangles. Okay, so I'm going to draw one of them over here. So I'll draw it doesn't matter which one, but I'm just going to do the yellow. So I'm going to rewrite the yellow right here. Okay, so this side is the square root of 8, this side is the square root of 8, this side is x, and that's the right angle. So is this a 30, 60, 90 or a 45, 45, 90 right triangle? 45, 45, 90, right? Because if the 2 sides are exactly the same and it's a right triangle, it has to be a 45, 45, 90. 45, 45. Okay, so I have the 2 legs. So if I want to find x, that's the hypotenuse, right? So let's go back to our 45, 45, 90. I have the legs, and I want to find the hypotenuse. Multiply a leg by the square root of 2. Multiply a leg by the square root of 2. So multiply a leg by the square root of 2. Can I multiply those to make 16? Yes. And then what is the square root of 16? 4. Okay. Okay, last one. Last one before you guys are going to do the last part. Triangle. So I got 3 triangles. I got a big triangle and then 2 smaller triangles. Big triangle, 1 triangle, another triangle. Okay. The big triangle is an equilateral triangle. What does that mean? There's 3 types of triangles. Equilateral, scalene, isosceles. What does equilateral triangle mean? They're all the same. Everything's the same. EQU, right? Equal. It means everything is the same. All 3 sides are the same. So this, and this are all the same. And all the angles are the same. That's 60, that's 60, and the big angle there is 60. This angle here. Okay? All right. Next thing is, I see a right triangle. We've been talking about right triangles a lot. And there's a reason why. Because we use right triangles. So I see a right triangle here. There's actually 2 of them, but this is the one I see first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that right triangle and redraw it just like I did the last one. Okay. So I know that this is 60. I know that this is 5, and that's x. Because that's what carries over. What's this top angle here? Do we know what this top angle is here? It has to be 30, right? It has to be 30 because we can't go over at 180. 30 plus 60 plus 90 is 180. And then I have to find what x is, right? So it's a 30, 60, 90. Which part of the 30, 60, 90 do I need to find? The short leg, the long leg, or the hypotenuse? Hypotenuse, yep. I have to find the hypotenuse, this guy right here. Okay. So the hypotenuse is x. So I'm going to go to my front page. Which do I know? Do I know what is 5? Is 5 the long leg or the short leg? The long leg is, or the short leg is here because this is the 30, and then the 60 is here, so it's actually the long leg. So 5 is the long leg. So if I know the long leg, is there any way for me to go from the long leg to the hypotenuse? No, I can't make that jump. I can only go from the long leg to the short leg, and then from the short leg to the hypotenuse. So I got to kind of take a medium jump. I can't make the big jump. I got to go from point A to point B and then get to the last one, okay? So I got to find the short leg first. So if I know the long leg, I got to find the short leg first. So how do I do that? I divide the long leg by the square root of 3. Divide the long leg by the square root of 3. Okay, so we'll call this y down here. So the hypotenuse, I'm going to put that on ice for a second because we can't do anything about that yet. So I got to find the short leg first. Okay. So the short leg, it said take the long leg and divide it by the square root of 3. That's what it said in the front. Take the long leg and divide it by the square root of 3. But we talked about this on Monday and Tuesday. I can't have a square root on the bottom, right? I can't finish a problem with the square root on the bottom. So what do I do to get around that? Multiply by the root. So we get 5 times the square root of 3. 3 times 3 is 9, or the square root of 9, which is 3. So this right here is 5 square root 3 over 3. So now I can do the hypotenuse. So now it said take the short leg, which I just found, and multiply it times 2. Well, one's a fraction, so let me make the other a fraction too. To multiply fractions, both of them have to be fractions. So I multiply straight across. 5 times 2 is 10, square root of 3. The bottom is just 3. And there's the hypotenuse. That's about as hard as they get. Okay, that's about as hard as they get. All right, so for your exit ticket, we got about 25-ish minutes. What you're gonna do is we're gonna fill out the table. I'll do the first one with you guys and then you guys can fill out the table. Okay, so let's go to the table. So the first table is a 30, 60, 90. So really this is 4 triangles, sorry. I should have put A, B, C, D here. So there's 4 different triangles. It's a 30, 60, 90. So what I have to do is the first one, they're always going to give you one of the sides. So one of the sides is 8. What is the other one? What is the other one? I have no idea. The first column is the short leg. The middle is the long, and the last one is the hypotenuse. So they've given me the short leg. They said the short leg is 8 and it's a 30, 60, 90. So I'm going to draw a little picture here. Put a right triangle. 30, 60. Okay. So for A, they said that the short leg is 8. That one is opposite of 30. So that means this down here has to be 8. And I have to find this guy and this guy. So if I have the short leg, how do I find the hypotenuse? What did it say to do to find the hypotenuse? What did it say in the front to do? If I have the short leg, how do I find the hypotenuse? Multiply the short leg by 2. Perfect. So we got short leg. Oops, not the short leg. I don't want short leg. Hypotenuse is what we're trying to find. Hypotenuse is right here. So we're going to take the short leg, which was 8, times 2. That's 16. Okay. The short leg was there. And then now we have to find the long leg. So if I have the short leg and I have the hypotenuse, how do I find the long leg? What did it say to do? What did the front say to do? Multiply the short leg, yep. So multiply 8 times the square root of 3. Can I multiply those to make 24? Can I put them in my calculator to make a decimal? Neither. So when it's neither, that's your answer. 8 square root 3. Okay. So I'm going to give you about 10 minutes to fill out the other missing spots. So when you're done, all of these missing spots for the first table should be filled in. If you finish, you can go to the next table. But right now, I just want you to work on the big table, or the first table, okay? If you're stuck, I don't know how to do B, draw a picture, okay? If you look at the back of your little booklet, there's a blank. It's blank. You can draw your triangles there if you need extra space, okay? Okay, so for 45, 45, 90, 2 of the legs are the same. The 2 legs are the same, and the hypotenuse is the only one that's different, okay? So for E, they give me 2 times the square root of 2 is a leg. Well, if one leg is one thing, the other leg is exactly the same. That's the nice thing about 45, 45, 90. One leg is the same, the other leg has to be exactly the same for 45, 45, 90. Okay, so now I have to go to my table. When I have a leg, how do I find the hypotenuse? Multiply the leg by the square root of 2. Okay. So the hypotenuse is going to be the leg times the square root of 2. Okay? So we're multiplying square roots. So the 2 square roots can multiply. You get 4. So you get square root of 4. The square root of 4 is actually 2. So really this is 2 times 2. So the whole thing is actually just 4. Okay? So then there's 3 more for that guy, and then you're done. Okay? So we have, what do we have left? We have about 15 minutes left, 14, something like that. So what I want you to do is finish the ones you haven't. I'll post the answers just like I do for exit tickets. I always post them on Google Classroom. So I'll post the answers. I'm not going to do them here. If you want some help, you can come up here and I'll help you. But I'm not going to post the answers until later today, so they'll be on Google Classroom. Don't leave them empty, because next week when we take the quiz, if you're looking at a bunch of empty spaces, it's not going to help you, okay? If you're not sure, if you're stuck and you drew the triangle and you labeled it and you read the table and it still doesn't make sense, come on up here, I'll help you, okay? I don't mind helping, but don't leave them blank, because once Wednesday happens and I'm looking at a student with blank, I'm not going to feel bad for that student. Whatever, that's your choice, okay? But right now you have time to do that. That's what I want you to do. If you get them wrong, you get them wrong, but still. So once you're done with that, then you can tape in your notes and we'll be done for today.